Okay, so let's take a look at this. Now, let's notice first of all that there's two radicals in this problem, which means that this is going to be done like one of the second examples I did in the video where you have two radicals. That means that you're going to end up squaring twice. So you're going to go through the process twice. Now, we need one radical by itself on one side to begin with. And let's notice that on that right side, that radical is by itself. So our first step is just to go ahead and square both sides. So let me turn on my draw feature here, and let's square both sides. Okay, now on this left side, what will help us is to write this out twice, because of course to square something means to multiply it by itself. So I'm going to write that out so that we don't miss any terms as we FOIL it out. And just pardon my bad writing with the mouse here. Okay, now on the right side though, because this is a radical, when we square it, these two operations will cancel each other and we'll get 17x plus 13. So this side is fortunately the easy side. Okay, so over here though, let's FOIL this out. We've got the square root of 16x times the square root of 16x. Well, since that's really the square root of 16x squared, we can think of the squares as, since we're multiplying each other, they're going to cancel each other out. We're going to get 16x. All right, now let's go to outside. Square root of 16x times the 17. Now, since 17 is not under the radical, it will end up on the outside. And then the radical will be kind of stuck to it. All right, now same thing when we do the inside. 17 times the square root of 16x. We'll get that same term again, 17 square root of 16x. So we can never multiply the inside times the outside. They just sort of stick together with radicals. Okay, now 17 times 17. I'll put that in my calculator. And that is 289. All right. Now, we still have radicals here. Let's add these like terms first. Since they both have the same radical, we can add together the two 17s, which gives us 34 square root of 16x. Just think it's just like adding 17x and 17x. The x part stays the same, but we add the two numbers in front. And now we have this. Okay, now, well, that wasn't a very good 13, but let's just remember that is 13. I just brought it down from here. Okay, so we still have a radical, so we need to get that radical by itself, which means I need to move this 16x and this 289 to the other side of the equation. And I'll leave the 34 square root of 16x over here. All right, so I'm going to just rewrite the 17x plus 13. But I'll move the 16x, that'll make it a negative 16x. And I'll move the 289, which will make it a negative 289. All right, now, before I square both sides, let's just clean up the right side. And we can square it with the 34 out front, that's okay. All right, so 17x and negative 16x will just give me plain old x. And 13 and negative 289 will be negative 276. Okay, so that's ugly. All right, now, let's go ahead and square both sides. All right, on the left side, let's square the 34. Notice it's not under the radical, so it's not going to cancel out with the square like the square root will. So 34 times 34 is going to give us 1156. And then when we square the square root, those two do cancel out, and we get 16x. On this side, however, let's go ahead and FOIL this out. We'll write it out as x minus 276 and x minus 276, and we'll FOIL it. So I'll go ahead on the left side and multiply 1156 times 16, which will give me a huge number. So we got large numbers in here, but hopefully in the end, when we start solving these large numbers, are going to not be so bad. We'll see. All right, but over here we'll have x times x is x squared. And x times negative 276 is negative 276x. And negative 276x times, or negative 276 times x is negative 276x. And then 276 and 276 multiplied together, we end up with, since it's negative times negative, we end up with positive 76,176. All right, so now let's notice it's quadratic because we have an x squared. So let's get everything on one side and see if we can't factor it. And I'm going to move the 18,496 over since everything else is on the side. And I can add like terms too. I'll do that when I've got them all together. So we'll leave these alone right here for the moment. And I'll go ahead and write that negative 18,496x. And I still have this big number here. Okay, so let's add all of our x's together. So we've got negative 276, negative 276, and negative 18,496. And that ends up giving negative 19,048. Okay, so this may or may not factor. I'm going to play around for a second and just divide numbers into 76, 176 and see what might work here. So just so you know how I did this, this is a really big number, and so we need factors of this that add to this right here. They'll both have to be negative, since this is a plus, and we need a negative in here. Oops, and somehow I left the x out there. And so I just started by dividing by 2, and then dividing by 3, and then finally I divided by 4, and I found that 4 times 19,044 works. And so that means we'll have 1944 and 4, and that will add to negative 19,048. So it's ugly numbers. Oops, I'm sorry. Erase. We need 4 there. So 4 times 19,044 multiplies to 76,176. And of course, if we add them together, that gives us this. All right, and so if we set these to 0, we're going to get the two possible answers of 19,044 and 4. And one of these is probably extraneous. So remember, with all radicals, we always have to check these to make sure that they actually work in the original. So let's start with the huge one, 19,044. Back up here where we started. So if I plug in 16 times 19,044 right here, plus 17 equal square root of 17 times 4 plus 13. I'm sorry, not 4. I'm thinking of the other solution. I just want to plug in 4, 19,044 plus 13, and I'll extend that radical over the top of it in a second. And let's let our calculator do this. So square root of 16 times 19,044. That ends up being 552 plus 17. And then I'll go ahead and let my calculator do all of this over here. Be sure when you put it in that you put all of that in parentheses like that. So that ends up giving us 569. And of course we can see that that will add to 569. So this will be a true statement. So this solution is correct. Now let's check the 4, which will be an easier check. Going back up here, let me just, so that it doesn't run into other stuff, I'll change the color. So let's stick 4 in there. Square root of 16 times 4 plus 17 equals the square root of 17 times 4 plus 13. Okay, and this will give me the square root of 64, which is 8 plus 17. So that's 25. Let's see if we check this. I'll put all of that into the calculator. This ends up being 9, and let's notice there's no way that's true. So the 4 does not work. So we have to X out the 4. Our solution is this one right here. And hopefully that will help you through it.